You could be nicer, right?
Help you understand.
I said they both got like a point negative one and one, right? Am I right?
So first, you gotta take the points on each one. So what is that point? Yeah, and then you gotta label that point. You just gotta label all the other points. So label them real quick and see if you notice anything about each one. So -1, like that's the x. We still need a y, so it's -1 comma. -1.
I'll use the bathroom.
And then we have this one here, but we need this one. So this is -1, -1. This one? That's gonna be 1 to the right, and up 1. So it's gonna be 1 comma 1. Now for this one, the x is the -1. Now what's the y gonna be?
You have a family.
Right, it's gonna be 1. So it's, the x is gonna be -1, y is gonna be 1. And now what's this point gonna be? Alright, good. So now it's this point here. What's that gonna be?
But this one is 2 and 1.
Yep. Yep. Good point now. So now it's going to see, do we notice any patterns? So do you see anything similar with these two?
Alright, it's about 2
I
minutes
see
left.
the graph is similar, well, because this has the same, these have the same weight.
Well, what is that one? So that's -1. Now is that up 1 or is that down 1?
Down, right?
So it's going to be positive or negative 1?
Negative.
That's going to be negative 1.
So this one would be negative.
Yeah, that one. So if you have -1 and -1, and +1, +1, if you see anything similar with this, you see a pattern.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, so I'm still confused.
Give a -1 and a -1. You have +1 and +1.
What?
Anything similar or different about these two numbers?
So they're negative. One is negative, one is positive.
Alright, so good. Alright, so 1 is -1 is positive. So now for this one, right? Well, we see that 1 is -1 is positive, but what about the other one?
So this has to be negative too?
No? Right, right, the different graph. Right, so all the points are right. But you gotta look and see, right? So these are the correct points. You saw them in common. These are both negative, both positive. Right? Here, so if this is negative, this is positive, but the y's, right? Do we see anything with the y's?
They're positive.
They're both positive. So they're both the same. Right? Now this one, right? Do we see anything in common with these?
The y is positive. So this is positive. One is positive, but this is negative.
So x value, right? It's gonna be how far we go over. So how much does it go over? Does it go over 1 or over 2?
Over 2. Wait. I'm talking about weight.
This one.
Over 1.
Alright, so over 1 up 2. So 2, 1 is gonna be 1 up 2.
Oh, it's one.
Okay, yeah.
Wait, is this?
That's what I'm
Okay, do you guys still need a minute or two for the do now, or are we gonna go over it?
You just go.
Gonna go over it?
Yeah.
So, for the do now, right? The first part of this do now is saying find the coordinates for the following points on each graph. Okay, so if you guys can't see the dots, right, we have 1 down here and 1 up here for this first graph. But for this first dot over here, what did you guys get for the coordinate?
negative 1, negative 1.
-1, -1. So then for this one up here, what do we get?
1, 1.
We got 1, comma, 1. Alright, good. So now for the second graph, right, we see at the 2 points, okay, there's 1 over here and 1 over here. So for this left point, what was the coordinate?
Negative 1, 1.
-1, 1. And what about this point on the right?
1, 1.
1, comma, 1. Now for this one, all the way over here, if you guys can't see that point, I'll zoom in. Right, we have this point down here. Which one is this?
Negative 1, 1.
Negative 1 and 1.
-1, -1. And for this,
No, 1 and 2.
Oh,
1 and 2, right? Because we're going over 1 and up 2. So we have 3 graphs, right? Do we notice anything about the 2 points on each graph? So let's look at this first graph. All the what? Right. So the x-intercepts are going to be these lines over here. They all do have -1 in common, right? So let's look at this first one. All right, this first one is a -1, -1, and then the other point is a +1, +1. So do we notice anything similar or different about that first one?
Different. So they're, one is negative, one is positive, right?
All right, well, one is negative, one is positive. So for this first one, right, we have -x, -y, and it's going to change to like +x and a +1.
Oh, that's what it meant?
Yes. So now we got to look at that. Now we also got to look at the numbers here, right? We have a -1, a -1, a +1, and +1. So if we disregard the positives and the negatives, right, are these the same numbers?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Same numbers. So for the second one, right? Well, for the first one we said it was -x and a -y, and then it changed to a +x and a +y. So do we notice anything about these two, right? With a -1, 1, and a +1, 1.
The y is, both have +1.
Okay, so the y is the same, but what about the x?
It's 1 is negative.
One is negative.
Negative and positive. So same y's, positive x, we'll say -x to a positive x. Okay. And do these have the same numbers? Are these all ones here?
Yeah.
Yes. So same numbers. Okay. Now,
Please pardon this interruption. Good morning. The tester is here in the nurse's office. Once again, the tester is here in the nurse's office. Thank you.
so right, we noticed something in common in the first one, right? We noticed sort of a pattern. Same thing for the second graph. Do we notice anything in common with this last graph?
No.
You got a 2?
Well, it's different because when the y is, there's a 2 and there's a -1.
Okay. So for
But
this
there's two
last
different
one,
numbers.
right, we have different numbers and different signs. Okay. So now we notice the difference between all the points and stuff. But second part, do we notice anything about the graphs visually? So let's start out with the middle one, right? This is probably going to be the easiest thing. Do we see any pattern, right? If it's all we did was switch the x signs, but we kept the y signs, does anything like look unique about that graph?
U-shape.
Okay, it's a U shape, right? But if it's a U shape, right?
Is that maximum and minimum theory?
Right, if I draw that line,
Oh,
right? Axis of symmetry. Is it symmetrical on the left side and the right side?
Yeah.
Yes. So this one, right? Symmetric
Oh, wow.
about y-axis. Okay. Now for this left one, right? If we're still talking about symmetry, okay? Do we see any pattern type thing going on with that left graph?
No, it's symmetrical.
It's symmetric, right? But it's not about this line, right? The left side doesn't look the same as the right side.
It's wait, let me see.
It does.
It is?
It's
Yeah,
symmetric.
it's symmetric.
It's symmetric, but it's not about this straight line,
What is
right.
that?
right? It's flipped, right? It's kind of rotated, right? This one is up here, and this one, it's the same thing,
Reflect over x-axis?
but it's like reflected, right? It's flipped over. So we're gonna call that, right? It's still symmetric because it still has two parts that are the same. We call that symmetric about the origin. The origin,
Like, zero, right? Yeah, so
origin is this middle point, right? That says 0, 0 in the middle. So origin, 0, comma, 0. What that means is if we rotate it, right, if you guys rotate your papers upside down, you'll see that it's the same looking graph. And now for this last one, right, do we see anything?
Wait, let me see. I mean, if you slice it as, I don't know, if you slice it as,
Well,
like absolute
it's
value.
symmetric. It is symmetric if you slice it as.
Well, is it symmetric, right? If we go down the middle, right, is it the same on the left side and the right side? No. Now, if you take your papers, right, and rotate it upside down, right, is this the same exact thing like that first graph?
No.
No. So do we see any pattern at all?
No.
No. Right. So we say no symmetry. Okay, so technically, right, these are even and odd functions. So an even function, right, if we go to write it, it's going to be f of negative x equals f of x. That's a little confusing. So what does this actually mean? Well, this means that if we change the x, right, if we go from a -1 to a +1, right, the y value is going to be the same thing. Right? So flip x, same y.
number. Oh.
So the same y is going to have the same number. So same y value. And then we just said that's going to be symmetric. Symmetric about the y-axis, right? This is one where the left side is the same as the right side. So for an odd, and we're going to start off the same way, right? If we change that x sign, now it's not going to be the same y, right? So for this odd one, right, what happened to the y? Right, it what?
Negative.
Right, so it started off as a negative, what did it end with?
Positive.
Ended with a positive, right? So we switch the signs. So if we start off with a negative x, right, we also end up with a negative y. So we say we flip the x, we also flip the y.
Like this one's for odd.
Yeah, this one's right. So now the odd one, right? The odd one was also symmetric, but it wasn't symmetric about the y-axis. What was it symmetric about?
X.
No, not the x,
Origin.
the origin, right?
That's me.
Symmetric about origin. Anyone still need time to copy that down, or are we good? Good. Okay. So, right, keeping all this in mind, right, we're gonna look at this first one. Right, this first one. We're gonna check to see if it's even first. Is it the same on the left side and the right side?
No.
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 Yep? No. So, we know that it's not even, right? Is it odd though, right? So for odd, we said that the same thing in one corner is going to be flipped in the opposite corner. So if you guys rotate your paper upside down, is this the same thing?
No.
No.